just did a weird thing there. Zoom just did a weird thing, but yeah, go ahead. You're good.
Yeah, I think it was the voice, the lady's
Yeah,
voice,
the lady's
recording
voice.
session. Now it's more professional.
Oh yeah, we're getting serious now, buddy.
Yeah, my friend, it's really a huge honor. I'm a fan since day one. I know you were involved in a lot of project musically, so it's cool to have you on our Quebec radio show, Prescription Punk Rock. But for maybe people that don't recognize your face or voice, who the hell are you, man?
Who the hell is this dude? My name is Brock. Yeah, I'm a guy who lives in Vancouver. I played in a Montreal pop punk band called the Doughboys back in the 80s, and that's probably how most people would know me. Yeah, I play in a band called Slip-Ons now out here in Vancouver, and yeah, other than that, I'm just a dude who writes songs and trying to be happy playing music.
I'm curious how music came to your life, not just playing, but listening to music. Was it any parents or friends, or you really did it on your own?
Yeah, it was mostly, I think, the influence of my mom. I think my earliest memory was like, listening to my mom's records, uh, which would be, oh God, like Simon and Garfunkel records. She had this one Simon and Garfunkel record. It had a song called Big Bright Green Pleasure Machine, which I've always thought would be a really excellent cover. So yeah, and I would like put the record on and just jump up and down on the couch. And I guess I don't know, I must have been, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 or so, something like that. So yeah, my mom played piano. Her dad played piano. So I guess that's sort of what fostered my love of music initially. And my mom passed away when I was 11, so maybe the music connection helped me to sort of cope with that and sort of get through those challenging years. Definitely as a young guy getting into first bands like Kiss and Cheap Trick, and then later Black Sabbath, and then the all the punk rock stuff, the Husker Du and all that. So yeah, not that unfamiliar a story.
No, but we share kind of the same story. That's the same thing with me, you know. You go with your parents what they're listening to, and that's the only thing you have access. And for me in the 90s it was kind of Madonna, the Beatles. So I got into that and it was more pop. So and then I got into metal, but that's when I realized through every style of music the importance of the melody. And it's cool that really young you were you were listening to that, like you said, Simon and Garfunkel, the harmonies and the vocal and all the songs and the storytelling. It's really complex in a way and really simple in another, because people would say, oh, there's two guitar and singing. And but yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and I think probably after that, like my next major kind of influence would probably be the Neil Young period, right? So from like Neil Young was basically what kind of made me feel like I could write a song, because certainly at that time, all the bands that you would see were so, like bands like, I don't know, like Boston or hair band, they were just so proficient on their instruments that none of us, you didn't dream of being able to do that. But when I'd listen to Neil Young songs and just hear him kind of warbling along and just doing these weird sort of strangled solos, and it just seemed reachable. It made me feel like, well, I could just pick up an acoustic guitar and put my feelings into music and words, and yeah, so that was kind of like the thing that got me thinking, okay, I can do this, and of course, uh,
Yeah,
punk rock kind of is all about, just try it, do it, you don't have to be great at it. So that
you're
definitely
right.
helped.
And you really nailed to the point. It's just putting your art into something you do, you create, and it worked for many musicians. I don't think that virtuosity. It's cool, but sometimes when it's too complex, people don't get it. I mean, some point Dragon Force is amazing, but it's like you like four or five songs, and then it's all the same story repeating, just like all those nuts. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes
Well,
when
so,
it's
some
too,
people really like that though. I mean, and that's
yeah,
cool if that's what they like. I mean, I remember working a Dragon Force show out here probably 10, 12 years ago, and the thing I remember most about it was the little trampoline that we had to set up for the dude to, so like I don't remember any of the notes. I just remember there was fans to make the dude's hair blow back, and then there was the trampolines where they jumped off. So, but I mean, if that's what the people are getting into, that's great. I mean, it's about, like you said, it's about emotion, right? So,
yeah.
for some people, the really super technical stuff with scalped fingerboards is really exciting to them, and for others, it's more about, like you're saying, the harmonies and the melodies and so forth. So I'm definitely in that camp, but I'm not gonna take away everyone else's joy.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. Oscar Do is such a band that was kind of underrated in a way, because I'm sure that if was with the label with SST and Greg and all those story, I'm sure if they were on a major label at that time when they got, I'm sure they had many offers, and it's just yeah, I'm sure they would be like the kind of Blink 182 back of their days, because they were really into something unique and poppy and punk and catchy. It was really interesting. It's always an experience getting back to those records, and you have to listen to the entire. Sometimes it's long, but it's great.
That's true, and it's kind of interesting that you point that out because, I mean, Husker kind of really ran onto the rocks and kind of broke apart not that long after they did get involved with Warner, right? And the major thing, I mean, that was that whole Warehouse tour, which actually we opened for them on that tour back in I guess that would have been like 80. I don't know, I have to look it up. It was at Le Spectrum. So yeah, it's almost interesting that the major label, when they finally got there, they kind of imploded, you know. It's kind of a weird thing. I mean, that happens to some bands. You could argue maybe the Replacements was a similar but different story.
Totally great example. But that's what make history. It's always a gambling thing. But when you do it because you just want to create, and it's not you don't base that for a living, it really change. And now I think it's the difference. The game changer is there. People have work, and it's kind of their. What else can I do on weekends?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the way that things have changed with the industry now. I mean, the way I see it, music is more of a service now than a product. Where for a long time we had the record industry and people bought music on, I mean, people still, collectors will buy vinyl, and I still buy vinyl, but for the most part, I think music is sort of working like a service in our society now, but more than a product. And it's kind of going back to the days where there were, traveling blues guys, and the way that musicians can make money now is really just by playing and selling merch, and even leaving aside the money aspect of it, like you said, I mean, I've always believed that music is kind of its own reward, right? Like all this other stuff that comes along with it is really just like a bonus. It's like, the cream on top of your milkshake or whatever. But the real food of playing music comes from just playing music. I mean, at the most basic level. So it's easy to kind of get a bit distracted by the other stuff. At the end of
You're
the day,
right.
it's really just the playing of the music and the writing, the creative connection. To me, that's the thing. That's where the real value is.
It's so true. It's so true. And you were kind of involved in the game too with the Doughboys, back in the days. It was the time just before the explosion of punk rock, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody was looking for a band kind of like you, a well balanced band that offer something that can reach a lot of people without being like forced commercially. It was natural. And it's cool to see band that have mentioned you as that really inspired them. And it's the will, like you said, it's something that you do and you don't really realize because you're young and naive and you just want to play. But then with the times, I'm sure you get why people have, that respect for you.
Well, like I've told a couple other people that have asked about this, and when you're in that sort of a situation, you don't always really realize how rare of a moment, a combination of chance occurrences sort of happening, and you don't really realize it at the time that you're just a small part of something bigger happening, this connection between, in my case, three other dudes in the band, and then, the team of people around that and the audience and et cetera, just how it spreads out. But, when you're in it, sometimes you think, oh, well, this is always how it's going to be. And, for me, I remember thinking, oh, well, whatever I do now, I'm just going to start and it'll be like this again. And, you don't realize how it's, a very rare and unique, you know, opportunity, maybe, or maybe opportunity is not the right word, but it's a really rare thing, you know, especially to be part of something bigger than yourself. I mean, certainly my ex bandmates, and Bondhead and Jonathan and John Kay and like lots of other people we've played with, I've gone on to do all sorts of great things, but yeah, that you don't realize in the moment sometimes that really, the real value of it is the connection between, you and your bandmates and the audience, and how rare that actually is.
Yeah, and it's cool because I'm sure that you were young, when you start up the band, and you don't want to be stuck with just that style, So I'm sure that you guys are proud that every project that you achieve after that musically kind of work because people were following you and know the name, and it's cool because it's a hard thing to do, but you were talented, so it's just follow the natural path, and not just to be just the guy that play with the Doughboys.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I don't really know what to say about that. That's kind words, man. Right
It
on.
was not a question.
Yeah, it was just, yeah, I'll take it. Checks in the mail.
So for people that may be unaware, after that, how was the creation process for you? Were you writing your material before and after, or you just like start something from scratch?
You mean like the current stuff I'm doing, or just in general?
Yeah, the current stuff.
Well, so this latest couple of singles I just put out, this is sort of leftover stuff from around that reunion Doughboys era, where Dave Grohl and we did a couple of shows with them. It was sort of like you were talking about, they were the successful band, and I think on that Wasted Light tour, they made an effort to, get other bands that were from the time that maybe didn't get anywhere like they did. And so when it came time to have the Montreal and Toronto shows, I guess our name came up, and Dave kind of went out of his way to make it work for us. So around that time, I was hanging out with Howard, and he kind of was like, well, come on over, let's record something, so I got Bondhead and Jonathan over, and did one song in one day, which was kind of a thing that had kicked around. And then he was like, okay, well, that's sounding pretty good. That was Hurrah Hooray. It's kind of like it's not dissimilar to like Doughboys stuff. It's sort of similar pace and kind of a simple song. So that went pretty quick. And then Howard was like, okay, well, here, like, take the keys and write something new for tomorrow. So I was like, okay, well, the pressure's on. I guess I'm staying at the studio tonight, right? So yeah, I wrote that next one, which was really just I had like a title, maybe the first line, and then yeah, we just kind of hashed it out the next day. Howard is really, he's sort of like a stealth recorder. Like he'll just kind of like do his job while you're, maybe like I taught Jonathan the song here, what about this, and we're working it up, and then by the time that we've kind of ready to run it down, Howard's got everything ready to go, or maybe has already started recording, right? And you're like, like he'll be putting amps here, bringing a chair, he's just a really, really brilliant and creative, supportive dude. So that's kind of how those two songs went down. And then, I ended up sitting on them for a while because it was sort of unclear whether, I thought I was probably going to re-record them with the band that I started working with later in Vancouver, and that kind of happened a bit, but we ended up just kind of moving on and writing new stuff, and then this stuff was kind of just sort of sitting there.
I love those stories of those songs that almost didn't see light, and it's I think it's sometimes sad because when artists leave and stop doing, there's songs that will never be create, and when you create, it always reach people. So, and it's a proof that they were deserved to be heard. But it took time, so it's cool, and it's amazing that you write one and the second one was kind of on the fly. Come, okay, that's good. Next. Oh,
Well, that's Howard for you, right? He's just going to always poke you in the right place to get you to take the next step. um
but it's a good thing because a lot of musicians need that. Not
yeah,
because
like
they're
in my
lazy,
case, I
but
mean, I went on and I was, like I've been playing with Slip-Ons, my current band. We've been together for like 10 years, and we're like literally about to release our first, we have a 7-inch out, and that's it. So um in my case, I was working a lot, and I eventually, it took me getting sick and realizing that I could die, and then from that, it sort of made me like, well, man, I really haven't put that many songs out in my life. I mean, for the amount of passion, and basically I've considered that the purpose of my life. But I was looking at my track record, and I'm going, well, I got that one solo record in 2000 and a couple of Doughboys records, and I'm like, I gotta get my shit going. And if I do die in 5-10 years, man, I got a lot more work to get done. So I was kind of like, all right, well, I better get going. And sometimes clearing the plate of the compost pile, can help to get the new stuff out as well. So in a way, getting these old things out is kind of also making room for newer stuff to get written as well. So it's kind of a weird thing with the creative process. If you get too focused on the wrong things, like you're talking about money and all that, it's really easy to get distracted by thinking about money, and then next thing you know, you're not making good music anymore, or you're not even making music at all. So you know
it's a tough balance to find, and it's really it's everyone quest. It's different for everyone, and the road is different, but at the end it's like you said, it's just to find that balance between being creative and not kind of selling a part of you in a wrong way, or accept it and embrace it. And
yeah, yeah.
and like
And
you said, it's always the few, that we see those story now of people getting like recognition through a video on YouTube, but still, when you see behind stories, it's never like you think. It's we're back to where it's not about the money. It's all about what you said, what you have to say and what you have to share with the world.
absolutely. And I mean, in some cases, like for me, maybe these songs needed to stew for a while, like sometimes, like the new record that I've just kind of finished with Slip-Ons. It's a 5-song 12-inch, at least that's the plan. Like one of the songs on that, like it had been kicking around like since my divorce in some form. It's totally brand new now, but like my point is, sometimes you have to live something in order for something to be finished. Like something has to change in you, or something has to, like it's like you throw the shit in the compost pile, and sometimes it's just stays compost, and sometimes something sprouts out of it. Sometimes the time has to go by for something to ripen and create a fruit. So in my case, maybe I just had to live through some stuff before I was ready to actually, put it on tape and get it out and onto the next thing. Like who can say, right? You just do your part to try to do the work, and then let go of it. And I mean, the important thing also is that, you know the audience is a part of the music. The act of creating music is not complete without an audience, in my opinion. You can write all the songs you want, but if you never share it with anyone else, to me that's kind of like the process isn't complete. I won't say it's a failure, because maybe somebody's just writing for themselves, but the way I kind of look at it, it's like, due diligence, doing an interview with you and talking about this stuff, pressing some vinyl, doing, whatever it is. To me, that's sort of like due diligence. You're going to write songs. Okay, well, now the next thing is you got to kind of complete the process and share it with people. And, honestly, that can be a scary thing for people sometimes, like, so, you know, sometimes it
Right.
takes time.
You're right. And it's cool because you don't want to release something that a couple of years later or 10 years later, you're disappointed because it went too fast or, like you said, it's each song, each record that's their own history, and sometimes it takes times. And it's cool. There's beautiful stories of unreleased thing that get released many many years later, and we discover them. And I think it's a rad thing too, because at the end that's what all that matters, to reach people like you said. So even if it take 20 years, at long as it's
Yeah, I mean, think about Nick Drake. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Nick Drake. He was
yes.
one of my favorite artists from when I was in my 20s. And I mean, he's a perfect example. I don't think anyone really heard of him until many, many, many years after he died. And then he's like on, like, for a while there, his songs were in like Volkswagen commercials. It was pretty weird. I'm like watching TV, and then Pink Moon comes on with a dude trying to sell the new Volkswagen Beetle. So, I mean, it was cool. But in his case, he lived his whole life, and nobody heard the music. So, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully that doesn't happen here. It looks like I've already won, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, but no, but like you said, like I think as getting older, we realize that a part of our life is already done. So and I think losing people that are near you. I've lost a friend a couple of weeks ago, and you're like, okay, it's kind of Russian roulettes after you mid 40s, 50s. You're like, okay, if my time is now I don't know, like you want to do more without burning yourself, and again it's a balance.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of morbid, but I've actually been keeping a list of all the people I've known that have gone. I mean, yeah, kind of a morbid thing, but you start to think about it, and it's like, holy crap, man! There's a lot of guys that or gals, people. I mean, I think about Alex a lot. Um, yeah, uh,
I think it's a beautiful thing because I'm always like trying to remember, and sometimes I'm like, am I forgetting somebody? And with a list, okay, I don't forget anybody. It's a cool thing to remember those one that you love and share things. Sometimes it's people that they're just part of your life a couple of years, but they really change something, or you feel connected, and that's the beauty of life, and that's
uh,
what
uh,
we were missing.
absolutely. I mean, it's kind of weird to say, because the amount of words I exchanged with Alex when he was alive. I guess I should probably say that I'm talking about like Alex Soria, for the people that aren't maybe aware. Original songwriter from the Nils. We shared a space with them in the early days in Montreal, and Alex was a super super shy dude. So it's kind of funny for me to say I miss him a lot, because the amount of words we exchanged, I could probably count on, like, two hands, right? He's the kind of guy, he would like talk to you and he would look at his shoes when he was talking to you because he was so sensitive and shy, right? But I mean, I'm feeling choked up talking about it. The amount of how deeply his music touched me at a human level, and I'm sure many other people. I talk to people all the time that still remember Alex. I mean, sometimes we cover Nils songs just because of how much it affected me. So yeah, man, again, it comes back to that. Just be grateful for the little time we have, right? You never know when our time's coming. And I'm acutely aware that I don't have forever. I feel like probably bought myself another 10 years or more, hopefully, knock on, or maybe more, but to make sure I do as much music as I can now, because you don't know what's coming next, man.
Through music, you can live forever. That's what Joe Strummer was saying, and he's right, man.
He's
And
proof of
and
it.
and
Yeah.
the Nails are such a great band. Another underrated band that maybe my generation. I'm 41. Were unaware in the 90s, but now I repeat myself, but with the pandemic and everything, I'm sure a lot of people discover them, and it's so cool that they're still around. Carlos is amazing. I love those guys.
Yeah, it's kind of too bad that a lot of people never got to hear them, but the Nils influenced quite a lot of bands, and I mean, definitely bands like Husker Du. I mean, I think Bob was listening to early Nils records. I mean, at least I've
Wow.
heard. I haven't really talked much to Bob, but I've heard that they were. So I guess my point being, in some way, the Nils music certainly affected other bands, and those bands reached other people. So in that way, Alex's music maybe touched a lot of people, but yeah.
Wow. So
Sorry,
cool.
just getting a little heavy moment there. Who's getting all weepy?
Yeah, it's a heart to heart interview. I love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're from Montreal, man, so it's I haven't been
Quebec
back to
City.
Montreal. Oh, in Quebec. Oh, jeez. I
Yeah.
apologize.
Did
That's a
you
big
heard we
used to
got
be a
we
big
got
rivalry,
minor
dude. You remember those when I was
Yeah.
a kid, those games between the Nordique and the Habs were like, oh my God, it could be a preseason game.
Yeah,
Season
but
hasn't even started yet, and people were going crazy, dude. I miss that.
yeah, but I was born and raised into the Nordic, and I was born and raised to hate the Canadian Montreal. But we lost our team, so and we were losing so much. I remember like seeing so many games where we lose like 6-2, 6-1, and but we love them, and yeah. So jokes on
So
us now.
are
We
we
don't
are
have a
we
team anymore.
are we in agreement that we both hate the Maple Leafs though, or what?
I don't hate the Maple Leaf. I hate everybody against like anybody that play against Montreal. I'm a fan, but like the rivalry between Boston and Montreal was really more intense. Like there
Oh
were
yeah,
fight
yeah,
with
yeah.
Quebec. It
Well,
was
every
just
every
like
every playoff was the first round. Almost every time was Montreal and Boston in the first round. At least when I was a really young kid. So that's sort of telling you how old I am, right?
yeah. But you got Vancouver, man. You never lose, never win the Stanley Cup. But yeah, and I'm surprised after all those years.
Yeah, it's funny. After leaving Montreal, I got a lot more into baseball. So I'm not much of a Canucks fan out here. I'm way more of a Seattle Mariners baseball fan. So I'm like a super baseball nerd.
When I was in primary, I had my hat, my Seattle hat, my baseball hat,
Oh, no
and
kidding.
nobody knew about that team. They were like, "What the hell is that?" I'm
Yeah,
like, "I
yeah,
love them."
absolutely.
So, with the music, you're gonna continue writing and creating, but there any way we can see you with the new record, the new EP with the band? Will there be shows or a little tour, and any chance to see you around maybe Montreal or Quebec?
Dude, there's nothing I would rather do than play Montreal and Toronto and Quebec City. I mean, I haven't been to Quebec City since I was tour managing Men Without Hats, probably like 10 years ago, and had ran into Jean Leloup, and we did that big festival out there. So there's nothing I would rather do more than to get out there and do that again. So due diligence, first things first, get the record out, and we'll go from there. It's a lot easier to travel in Canada than it is to cross into the States these days with the whole P2 situation, right? Like you can't travel in America like we used to
Yeah, but
as
I'm sh-
easily. So,
I'm, I'm sure that with the Doughboys, you realize that Canada is a pain in the ass to cover too, man. There's so much traveling time involved between each city, and it's not like
absolutely.
Europe.
No, no. I mean, in the old days, we used to do all of Canada in like 10 to 14 days tops. And, we would skip most of the small towns, right? Like, I mean, I remember hearing about bands like Sum 41 and they would be like doing 30-day tours of Canada. And I'm like, where are they playing? Like, are they playing like Medicine Hat, Alberta? Or like, I mean, I don't think I've ever played Lethbridge in my life. Like, I think we did Edmonton, Calgary, and maybe played Lethbridge once, so there was like 10 gigs from like Vancouver to Montreal. And we usually would do the East Coast, like Quebec and Moncton, Halifax. That was usually a separate trip. So to answer your question, I'd love to do all that again. Just we can make it happen. Maybe have to write some grants to make that happen nowadays.
It
But
was
yeah,
the real Mackenzies. Like they really surprised me. Like they did many times. They drive to Vancouver to Quebec without any fucking show and start the tour in Quebec. I'm like, man, those guys are crazy.
that's commitment, man. That's commitment. At that last tour I was telling you about with Men Without Hats, I drove the other way around because we finished in Quebec. And so we had to that was the last show in Quebec. And then it was basically a 3.5 day drive back. And then I had to return the Sprinter van in Portland. So it was like drop the band off and then drive to Portland. So yeah, buddy. Good
You know, when
times.
when the road trip ends, everybody is at home sleeping. You're the last one. No, you get to spend
I'm on my way to
Portland.
Portland,
It's
buddy.
fucking not done. It just started again. Bye bye,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah,
I'm back
yeah,
at work.
yeah, absolutely.
But I'm sure
Absolutely.
those great memories.
Yeah,
I
so
love Men
many.
Without Ads.
So many. Yeah, so many. And anytime I go out on the road, it's always a good time. So hopefully there'll be more of that with the new band.
Yeah, yeah, can't wait. Of course, we're gonna play the EP when it's released. The single, it's such great songs. And um, did you like? Because I find it really original and different. But is it something that you challenged yourself to do, or it really came naturally when you wrote them?
Yeah, those ones just kind of flowed out pretty naturally, honestly. So I've a few people that have reviewed it have said it sounds kind of very old and dated, but also new and fresh at the same time. And man, I think that's a great compliment, honestly. Somebody said there was, connecting different parts of like 60s, 70s, and 90s. And I thought that was weird because they skipped the 80s. Because no, I wasn't really trying to do anything particular. With the second song, Anemic Heart, it was really just, I mean, it was a bit more of a, not quite a typical Doughboy song. It was more like a ballad, sort of not full ballad, but, a little bit less, like in the first days of the Doughboys, it was always play faster, always. It was like, okay, that's great, play it faster. So now I don't really have to play faster. I still like to play fast, but I'm 55 now. I slowed down a little bit. So yeah, just
It's
kind of whatever came out.
Zoom is I've just had 40 minutes with Zoom, but we have to do this again, man. There's
Yeah,
so
man,
many
totally.
story to share, and thank you so much. Like I said, we're gonna play the songs, and people, of course, go check the singles. They're everywhere.
Yeah, right on. And it's been great to talk to you, Eric. And maybe we'll talk again once the Slip-Ons record's out in the summertime. Be great.
Yes, yes, we
Awesome,
keep
man.
each other in touch, and thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Prescription is what you need.